Have you ever taken a moment to just look back over your life and be amazed at how good God is at connecting all of the dots? Sometimes it blows me away to think about how crucial every part of my story has been to get me to right now. Sometimes things can feel so small in the moment or so unrelated to your life as a whole. And it's only later when you can look back that you can rejoice over those things that were so seemingly insignificant. I love how God shows up and shows off and reminds us that He really is in control and lining up all the pieces of our life for His good purpose and His plan. Luke chapter 1, 2, and 3, we can see God doing just that in the lives of Zechariah and Elizabeth, John the Baptist's parents, and in Mary and Joseph's life, Jesus' parents, but also in the nation of Israel as a whole. I love how multifaceted God is, and it fascinates me how good He is at just connecting all the dots. Luke chapter 1 introduces Zechariah and Elizabeth, John the Baptist's parents, and Luke talks about where they were in life at this point. So we know from the word that they were very old, and that in verse 6, the word calls them righteous. Now, anytime the word calls somebody righteous, I kind of take note of it because it doesn't happen very often. And the thing about the word righteous, when it refers to a human, it doesn't mean that they were without sin. They were definitely still sinners. But what that word means is that they lived with integrity, and they lived with intentionality towards the things of God. So they were both priests from a priestly lineage, two different priestly lineages, but they were intentional and careful about their walk with the Lord. They were careful to obey His commands. They were careful to honor Him in how they lived. And that speaks volumes to me because their circumstances were not ideal. They were barren, which in the Jewish culture was a huge mark of disgrace. It was a huge stigma that they had carried for many, many years of their life. It was almost seen as if God had cursed the person that was barren because of some secret sin. So then to be a priest and have that stigma attached to you, I mean, can you just imagine the condemning looks that they had probably gotten their whole life? Or the tears that Elizabeth had shed, wondering, like Rachel in Genesis, and like Hannah, the mother of Samuel, wondering, why, God, and when is my child gonna come? I just want a family. Family was so important in Jewish culture. So it's so awesome to me that Luke takes the time to explain to us some of the dots that the Lord connected before John could get here. John was the forerunner of Jesus, so the timing of his birth was critical. And I mean, we wish that the Lord could have spoken to Zechariah and Elizabeth way early in their marriage and told them, hey, I'm going to answer your prayer. I'm going to make you parents, but you're going to have to wait because your son, see, he's got this really big job, but it's not going to happen for years, so just be patient. But God didn't do that. He just filed that prayer away in heaven with Him, knowing that He was going to fulfill it. But see, years aren't the same to God as they are to us. So 1 year, 10 years, 30 years, it doesn't mean the same thing. So the Lord knew that that prayer was going to be fulfilled, but He knew that the timing just wasn't right yet. And that gives me encouragement, knowing that the prayers that I pray now will find fulfillment, whether they're prayers that He can answer with a resounding answer right now, or whether they're going to see an answer in the future. I can rest assured knowing that God doesn't just block them out. He really does hear our prayers. Verse 12 of chapter 1 records a moment that Zechariah had with Gabriel the angel. And Gabriel confirms that. He confirms that, hey, God has heard your prayers. Not only the prayers that you're praying right now as the priest ministering in the Holy of Holies, and Zechariah's prayer would have been for the redemption of Israel and for the Messiah to come. God wasn't only hearing that prayer, but he had also heard the prayer of Zechariah's life, the prayer for a son. And it's so cool because now we see how the two of those connected. And it's like this big aha moment for Zechariah, where he could see that, oh, the redemption of Israel is tied to the birth of my son, and now is the time that God is going to show up and show off, and he's going to do it in a supernatural way because Elizabeth and I are very, very old. I love it when God does that in my life, when he shows up in a supernatural way so that there is absolutely no way that I can give credit to myself or to somebody else to just just naturally happen. No, I love it when God resoundingly, supernaturally shows off. That makes me happy to see that in Zechariah and Elizabeth. Also, something that's interesting is that Zechariah responded to the angel with unbelief. He asked him, how can I be sure that this was going to happen? Now, doubt and unbelief are two different things. God can handle our doubt when it's coming from a place of just unknown, but we're going to step out anyways. But when we come to him with unbelief, that's just like there's no faith, and that's veiled eyes, and he responds to faith. So it's interesting, in one of the commentaries that I read, it was actually an act of compassion on the Lord's part to silence Zechariah for the remainder of Elizabeth's pregnancy, because the unbelief that Zechariah was speaking was damaging. And God is so kind and compassionate towards us, and he cares so much about us that he didn't want in that moment for Zechariah to say things that would damage him. So in his kindness, he just silenced him. Have you ever looked at that passage that way? I never had before. I'd always just thought, well, that was just an act of justice on God's part. But the thought that it was an act of compassion, that he cared so much about the fulfillment of this and how Zechariah responded to this, that he was like, well, your words just aren't helping you right now, dude, so I'm just going to take away your words so that you can't do any more harm. And that's interesting. So the thing that really blew me away in the first 3 chapters of Luke is just honestly the connecting of the dots that we got to see. I'm not going to go through the story of the birth of Jesus, just because these are my videos and this is my study time, and I'm just going to choose to overstep that one. I don't think I could say anything at all about it that hasn't already been said. So just know that my thoughts on that are that it's just a really cool act of God, the way that he did things, the way that he connected the dots. That's how I looked at it this time as I was going through Luke, was that God was just the ultimate dot connector. I know that I've repeated that a zillion times, but I don't know another way to say that. So I hope that you enjoy Luke chapter 1, 2, and 3. I'll come back in the next video and talk about a cool passage in Luke chapter 3 that really kind of captured my attention. But until then, have a good day.